the Kings have swept the season series against the Los Angeles Lakers, which is huge considering they are in a playoff play-in battle against the Lakers. And with this win, the Kings move up to sixth place, or they're tied. And I think they have the tiebreaker for now over Phoenix, but that tiebreaker will really be decided later on. And the Kings continue the trend of showing up in the big games, either against the best teams or against teams around them in the standings. And they have back-to-back dominant performances on their home floor. After losing to the Rockets, they bounced back, as we all expected, the most predictable, inconsistent team in the league. And remember when the sky was falling way back at near the beginning of the season, when the Kings were 0-4 on the second night of back-to-backs. You know, they were losing to the Pelicans a bunch, 0-4 on the second night of back-to-backs. And here we are, the Kings, I believe now 6-5 on the second night of back-to-backs. So they have completely turned that around. And just the second straight game of the Kings knocking down the three ball, but also the second straight game of playing really well defensively, holding the Bucks to under 100 points, holding the Lakers to 107 points, and in both games, holding a lead. And holding leads has been something that the Kings have been struggling with recently, but they do it back to back here. So very encouraging signs. And another game where Keon Ellis wins as a starter. He's now 6-0 in the starting lineup. I mean, there's so many stats about this game, just like there were so many stats about last game. Just when the Kings are winning, there's so many relevant stats. Keon Ellis 6-0 as a starter. You had Fox moving to, what was it, third all time in scoring on the Kings. You had Sabonis, of course, extending his double-double streak, plus racking up a triple-double. You have Sabonis moving to 10-0 against Anthony Davis in his career, which just continues to be a hilarious stat because it doesn't mean a ton, but it definitely is true that Anthony Davis has had this reputation of kind of being a soft player, you know, not wanting to play the center position, not liking the physicality. And then you have Sabonis on the other end of being this super physical player who plays hard on every single possession. So you just kind of have opposite players. And so Sabonis definitely exploits the things that Anthony Davis doesn't like to do. And so you can see why Anthony Davis would be 0-10 against Sabonis. And I'm sure some of those, you know, early losses didn't really matter because Sabonis was young and, you know, probably coming off the bench, which is why it doesn't matter a ton. But I think there is some truth in saying that Sabonis is a good matchup against Anthony Davis. And, you know, I think one thing that really shows that for me is just when you look at when the Lakers are taking free throws. And, you know, we saw that quite a lot compared to the Kings. Another game where, you know, a team is taking a lot more free throws than the Kings, although kind of expected when it's the Lakers and Bucks back to back. But the difference between the Bucks trying to rebound free throw misses and the Lakers was hilarious because watching last night against Milwaukee, I think Milwaukee rebounded like 3 of their own free throw misses. And it's just by, you know, Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis trying to get in there, just getting stuck in, getting their bodies in there, getting their hands on the ball. And then you just have a totally different mentality here where Anthony Davis doesn't even try to go for rebounds. And so I think that's a good example of the mentality difference. I thought this was a game where the Kings just played really, really solid basketball for the entire 48 minutes. There was never a time where they let the Lakers go on some big run, or never even really a time where they gave the Lakers a chance to go on a big run. And what I mean by that is, I think you saw last night against the Bucks, there were a few opportunities where the Bucks could have gone on runs, but they just missed shots. And I didn't really see that in this game. There was a slight worry maybe early in the fourth where you had the Kings turning the ball over twice in maybe 3 possessions and LeBron getting 2 wide open dunks. And at that point you're like, okay, come on, just lock in. Don't let this slip away. I thought Mike Brown did a really good job of stopping any bleeding really early on with his timeouts. that's something I feel like I don't talk about a lot. But I think in this game, Mike Brown's timeout usage was really good and timed very well. But with the Kings not having Kevin Huerter, also not having Trey Lyles, they had Keegan Murray back, which was huge. And so without Lyles and Huerter, they needed other guys to step up. And step up they did, Barnes and Keegan both, with great shooting nights. And when the Kings have two out of the three starters that are not Fox or Sabonis shooting well from three, they are almost unbeatable. And in this game, you even have Keon Ellis going 3 for 5 from three. So 3 for 5 from three for Keon, 5 for 10 for Keegan, and 7 for 11 from HB. When the Kings are shooting like that, they aren't going to lose many games. But I will say most of them were very, very open shots. And so this wasn't just the Kings being hot and making contested shots. It was them making wide open threes that were created either through drives to the rim or Sabonis getting inside, posting up, and drawing attention to himself, and then kicking out, and the Kings moving the ball around the perimeter really well. Barnes had a very interesting game because I think starting out, his defense was extremely poor. Obviously, you have him guarding LeBron James, but he didn't get out to Austin Reeves quick enough. There's another moment where he tries to come over and help on a drive and just like offers no resistance. There were a few other times where he was just slow in rotation. And so I'm just thinking, oh no, here we go. A bad Barnes defensive game. And that's especially bad when you're playing LeBron and he's the one that has to guard LeBron. But he really picked it up after that really poor start. And sure, there were some times where he died on some screens. But for the most part, I thought his defense on LeBron was pretty solid. And the Kings as a whole were defending both LeBron and AD really well. What the Lakers tried to do was they were getting the switch of Barnes onto AD, Sabonis onto LeBron. And most of the time, they were throwing it into Anthony Davis in the post and really trying to get Anthony Davis to get going. But luckily, Anthony Davis just seems to lose all of his basketball skills when he plays the Kings. And, I'm talking about Sabonis's physicality. Barnes is also a physical guy and a strong guy. He's not super laterally quick, but if you think you're just going to back him down straight to the rim, you are in for a surprise, because one thing that Barnes can do really well is stand there and put his hands up. And he did that multiple times, both against Anthony Davis and LeBron, and forced misses around the rim. But the Kings were just super active in helping onto Anthony Davis and making sure to build the wall against LeBron, not let him get going downhill towards the rim. And their game plan was to make others beat them. And so they were forcing that skip pass out of Anthony Davis. And for the Lakers, to their credit, the other guys were not beating, but doing pretty well in the first half. Austin Reeves knocking down threes. You had Rui doing a really good job of spotting up on the three-point line, but then when he gets run off the three-point line, when he gets the pass, getting into the mid-range, either knocking that down or just creating something inside, or even before the pass gets to him, getting to a spot inside. His off-ball movement was really good. And so it was the Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves show in that first half, but I think the Kings were going to live with that because you just want to make sure that Anthony Davis and LeBron don't get going. And D'Angelo Russell as well. You had Keon Ellis, putting him in jail. We have another resident of Ellis Island. He can join Damian Lillard. Hope he has a nice stay. But the amount of times the Kings were getting their hands on balls when the Lakers would try to post up or drive into the paint, you had Alex Len just every time someone tried to post him up, just batting the ball away. You had Keon reading the passes while in rotation and getting steals. If Keon gets enough minutes, he's going to lead the league in steals. I mean, 3 steals again for him. You had Sabonis with 2 steals, Keegan with 2 steals, Fox with 1 steal, Len with 2 steals, and then Duarte with 1 as well. And so I think the Kings just stuck to their game plan of making others beat them. And then in the first half, you had Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura beating them. So then You have to make a slight adjustment in the second half. You have to make sure you're really running Austin Reeves off the line. You have to make sure that you're ready for Rui to get into the lane or get into the mid range and have that next guy ready to help. But I think for the most part, they just stuck to their game plan and it worked really well. The Lakers shot really well from three, 14 of 32, but they weren't shooting super well around the rim. The Kings were forcing turnovers. And I think when the Lakers, at one point in the second half, they were just trying to force feed Anthony Davis in the post. And in the modern NBA, unless you're Nikola Jokic or maybe Joel Embiid, but even Embiid doesn't really do that, that's probably not going to work and it's just going to stagnate the offense. And that's really what happened for the Lakers. The Lakers only scored 4 field goals in the third quarter and they got 17 points. They got to the free throw line some, but it was just beautiful defensively. Sabonis kept getting those back contests on Anthony Davis when AD would try to rise over Harrison Barnes. So just beautiful defense all around. Looking more at the offense, the Kings were getting open looks really early on and knocking down a pretty good percentage of them. Where I was a little worried was from like the floater area, the mid-range, hook shots. Felt like the Kings were missing a lot. Fox wasn't getting going. He had a slow start. I didn't like his shot attempts. He was just taking a lot of contested jumpers. Just felt like he was forcing things. And other guys were also missing from the mid-range. And so, we were hitting some threes, but still were behind by a little bit. But I think forcing turnovers against like Anthony Davis, swiping down when he was in the post and things like that really got the Kings out and running, and that helped. And then you also had Sabonis just bullying Anthony Davis inside. Both teams kind of went to zones early on, and the Kings periodically throughout the game would go to a zone. I don't think the zones worked particularly well for either team, especially the Kings later on in the game. But despite some of those interior shots not falling for the Kings early on, they still did a really good job of staying connected. You had Keon hitting a nice mid-range jumper. Love seeing that. And then things are going really well because Alex Len hits the 3 at the end of the quarter, or not the 3, the long mid-ranger to end the first quarter and tie the game at 29. Alex Len had a really solid game, both hitting that jumper and also just causing problems for Anthony Davis and playing really solid defensively, forcing LeBron into jumpers and contesting them well. I thought he had a really good 9 minutes. Also, you have Davion coming in, and that must just suck so much for D'Angelo Russell to have Keon Ellis starting out guarding him, and then you're like, okay, phew, Keon's going to the bench, and then here comes Davion. It's like, what are you supposed to do? Both of them were just hounding D'Lo, and D'Lo ended up going 2 for 9 from the field. And I said coming into this game, that was a big point of emphasis. Is limit D'Angelo Russell. I thought the Kings offense got going a little more in the second quarter. Keegan Murray had a really good first half offensively shooting the ball. And then you had Malik Monk go down with an injury and go to the locker room for a lot of the second quarter. So that was a little scary, but Duarte comes in and he hits a 3. Then he gets a steal. Then he makes a nice drive and gets a pass to Domas, who I think got fouled. Then he hits another 3. And he was just making really good decisions. And so it's nice that it seems like we found the role players that are working for us so far, or finally in this season, because that was a struggle for a while, but we got Keon now. Davion's been playing well, although his 3-point shooting, he had a couple bad misses. He had a mid-range miss, and he didn't look great last game shooting, and so I'm hoping this isn't the end to our magical Davion sharpshooter days. Hopefully it's just, a couple games of bad shooting. Like, that's fine. Let's hope he can, knock a few down in the coming games. Although he did have some nice drives. He had a really nice drive and kick. And so he's still doing positive things out there, even though he's not knocking down his shots. But then what was really nice in that second quarter is, I talked about Fox. His shot diet wasn't great. He was struggling. But then he closed the second quarter really strong with a strong take to the rim. And the Kings go in with a 4-point lead. And then he got going more in the second half. And the Lakers, they just don't have anyone at least not anyone who's healthy that can guard Fox at this point. He creates so much space against their defenders. You look at Spencer Dinwiddie trying to guard him. You look at Austin Reeves trying to guard him, and they just give him way too much space. And so he can either rise up into an easy mid-range shot, which he got knocking down in that second half, or in the Spencer Dinwiddie case, Spencer Dinwiddie just backed off him for no reason. Fox didn't even make a move. And so Fox just took all of that space and went right to the rim by him. And so Fox, he went 1 for 5 from 3, 9 for 20 from the field. But I felt like he really bounced back from a rough shooting start early in the game and just made a lot of good decisions and didn't keep settling from 3. In the third quarter, the Kings' defense was definitely a big part of their offense, forcing more turnovers. I think when you look at, I don't have the numbers, but the Lakers had 14 turnovers. The Kings had 12. And I wonder how many of those were live ball turnovers for each team, because it felt like the Lakers had more of the live ball turnovers where the Kings were grabbing it and then going in transition. Now, the Kings didn't always convert in transition, and they've been bad all season at converting when there are defenders back in transition, even when they have man advantage scenarios. You had Keon just like holding on to the ball and just traveling. And then you had another instance where they messed up a fast break in that third quarter. But still, at least, they were creating the turnovers to be able to get out on the fast break. And you had Keon punishing defenders for going under the screen on him, just confidently rising into 3-point shots, which was beautiful. And he continues to make a strong case for starting. And so with Kevin Huerter out, we got to look at what a starting lineup with Keon could look like. And it looked pretty good. Obviously, he has to be consistent. He hasn't done it for a very long time. But every time he's gotten a chance throughout the entire season, he's performed well. It's just that sample size isn't the biggest, even though it's over a large period of time. But I have a lot of faith because it seems like what he's doing is sustainable, because it's obviously starting on the defensive end, starting with just him having great hands, and then him knocking down the catch and shoot threes, or knocking down the threes when guys go under on the screen, or just making good cuts to the basket, even if he doesn't always catch the ball, And so it really does seem sustainable. Harrison Barnes, though, in the second half was amazing. He had 23 points to lead all scorers on the Kings. Like I mentioned, 7 for 11 from 3. And that was huge because he was being guarded a lot of the game by LeBron James. And LeBron just decided not to defend him. Like I say, LeBron was defending him. He wasn't. Right away, when I saw LeBron matched up on HB, LeBron was just giving him so much space with Domas near the top with the ball. And I just called before the play even happened. I'm like, Harrison Barnes is just going to come around and knock down a 3. And that's exactly what happened, because LeBron just decided not to defend him. And that happened time after time after time of LeBron just taking these defensive plays off, and Harrison Barnes punished. And Barnes just kept getting open and he kept knocking him down. That's one thing that Barnes has been consistent with this entire season. His 3-point shooting has been super consistent. And he took over in the fourth quarter, hitting 4 threes for 12 points. And that's just one thing you can't knock him for. He's firing away and he's making them. The other parts of his game are up and down, but his 3-point shooting is there, and that's extremely important. And there were times where LeBron was just grabbing HB because he just couldn't guard him. He couldn't keep up. And the refs let him get away with it, of course, because it's LeBron. But that just kind of shows LeBron was just too tired to keep up with that. And HB, he even went right by Anthony Davis and got a dunk. That was a nice play in the first half. And then he tried to dunk right on Anthony Davis. That didn't exactly have the same results, but I thought HB had very good aggression, even with having to take a very difficult assignment on the other end of guarding LeBron and then constantly getting switched onto AD in the post. And then you had the Sabonis play where he kind of elbowed AD in the face and scored on him. That was amazing, just because it's constantly the other way around. Sabonis is getting elbowed in the face constantly with no call or even a defensive foul call. And so it was just so nice to see it happen the other way and for him to get away with it. It was beautiful. And the Kings closed the quarter really strong again, just like at the end of the first half. At the end of the second quarter, you had Fox with two nice jumpers to close the quarter strong. And then he drove in, didn't get the foul call on the last play. So it could have been even better, but he just kind of took it into his own hands, like he often does at the end of quarters. And when he's making the shots, it looks really good. And when he's not, it looks really bad because he's, either totally stagnating the offense at the end of a quarter or turning the ball over. But when it works, it is amazing. I talked about the start of the fourth a little bit already with those two turnovers and then also LeBron getting into the paint. But a little bit before that, you had Fox with really good help in the paint, leading to a Keon steal and then a Len hook shot, which was amazing. Alex Len just doing great things out here. He banked in a free throw last night. He made a long jumper and a hook shot tonight. Just amazing from Len. And then De'Aaron just absolutely cooked Jackson Hayes, which was fun to watch. Every time the Lakers would get something going offensively, LeBron had a good fourth quarter scoring the ball. He was getting to the line. Anthony Davis got to the line a few times. Rui knocked down a three. Austin Reeves knocked down a three. But every time the Kings had an answer, it was Barnes hitting a three to answer, or it was the Kings missing, but Sabonis getting the offensive rebound. He did that twice. One, he forced the offensive rebound, and Keegan got it, kicked out to Malik, who hit that logo three. Then another one for a Barnes three. And then you had a Davion drive to a Barnes three. So just these timely plays to answer right back at the Lakers. And speaking of timely plays, Keegan Murray drawing a charge on LeBron. That was huge because that could have been a big momentum play for the Lakers, and he stopped it right there. And then Fox made some tough shots down the stretch to really close it out. He also turned the ball over twice down the stretch, and that was just like the one thing you can't do. They were such dumb turnovers too, and the Lakers just went right to the free throw line on the other end, I think on both of them. And the game was pretty much out of reach, but I'm just like, come on, just keep it clean when you have that big of a lead. Just take some tough shots. Like, it's okay to take some tough shots. Did we learn nothing from the game against Phoenix, where we could have taken a shot clock violation on every possession and still won? Just don't turn the ball over in those situations, especially live ball turnovers. And they, Fox did a couple times. So they got to clean that up. And then you had Sabonis with like a loose ball foul when the Lakers were in the penalty going for an offensive rebound. That one is harder to get mad at, where, you're just allowing Anthony Davis to go to the free throw line and score with the clock stopped. But it's harder to get mad at because he had just gotten a bunch of offensive rebounds to totally kill the Lakers' momentum. So I think that's a little different, but still, you got to be smart. And those are the reasons that the Kings have blown leads, but it was definitely too late in this one, and they made some good offensive plays down the stretch and were shooting really well down the stretch, so it didn't matter. Just looking at some more individual performances from this game, Keegan shooting well. Hopefully this gets him going, because he said he wasn't 100% out there, but he looked pretty good, and he hasn't been shooting the ball well recently, and so hopefully this can get him going. Sabonis with the massive triple-double, playing great defense on Anthony Davis. Still a very underrated defender. Sabonis, he gets made out to be by some people as just a bad defender, and he's not. He's not a bad defender, but just a super solid game from him. Keon with the 14 points, being an offensive threat while also doing what he does on defense is huge. I didn't talk too much about Malik Monk, other than him leaving with an injury, but he came back in the second half, and he didn't really do too much in this game, other than, he got his normal, 8 points, 6 assists. That's kind of, a quiet game for him. He still gets his numbers though, and he still makes a positive impact on the offense, but he couldn't quite get the floater going. And so I think that was really the difficulty for him, but still made some nice plays in the pick and roll. The Kings have now won 4 out of their last 5 games. Of course, the game they lost was at home against the Rockets, but they also are 2-1 now on this, or sorry, 3-1 on this 6-game homestand. And so the last two are against New York and Memphis. So I expect us to win against New York and lose against Memphis. No, but New York has been playing, I want to say, really well lately. But then I was just going to say that because they had that stat of holding teams to under 80 points for 3 straight games. But they actually haven't been winning, all their games recently. They've been actually losing quite a few, but they did get OG Anunoby back, so definitely can't take them lightly. The Kings do get a pretty big break though until that game, but man, the Knicks defense has just been locked down, and a lot of that even without OG Anunoby. But yeah, these last 3 games have been pretty incredible. Not playing the greatest opposition. Like they played the Sixers twice, and the Embiid-less Sixers twice, and the Magic, who we know their offense can be pretty bad. But still, you have Josh Hart putting up this massive triple double. He's had a few triple doubles this season. His rebounding stats are crazy. Kings definitely need to keep him off the offensive glass. So that's going to be important, whoever's matched up with him, just always being aware. Everyone needs to be aware of where he's at and make sure they're boxing out. Obviously, I don't know who's going to be playing for the Kings in this game, if Kevin Huerter will be back, Lyles, whatever it is. But whatever the matchup is against Jalen Brunson, it should be fun. If it's Keon Ellis, then that's very, very fun, and I can't wait to see that. And if it's not, then okay, you have De'Aaron Fox. That's still pretty fun. Fox defending Brunson. Should be a pretty competitive game. This is the first meeting between these teams this season. They'll have another one a little later on towards the end of the season. Obviously, every game matters, but I wouldn't be mad if they lose against New York and then win against Memphis. Just the thing is, I have zero faith in them actually winning against Memphis. But just however they do it, I want them. They're 3-1 right now in this 6-game homestand. At least go 4-2. Just win one of these next 2 games, and then the schedule gets a little easier. Just for a short period of time, it gets a little easier. Just a quick recap of the standings. The Kings are tied in 6th with the Suns. They have a half-game lead on the Mavericks, who they'll have 2 straight games against later in the season. I'll be going to one of those games. So those 2 games are just going to be super important. They now have a 4-game lead on 10th, the Warriors. They have a 3-game lead on the Lakers for 9th. The Pelicans lost tonight, so they're 1 game back of the Pelicans. And sneakily, the Clippers are within striking distance, or were within striking distance of the Clippers, 3.5 back of that 4th spot. And Kawhi just went down with a back injury, I guess. And so that could be super bad for them down the stretch. And so I just hope that we continue to look up in the standings. Try to chase down 5 and 4 rather than constantly having to look down and be like, man, these teams, they're coming. But one last thing, the Kings finally, with this win, moved to a +1 point differential on the season. Not overall point differential, but like on average. So they're averaging 118.4 points per game, allowing 117.4. For the longest time, they were both negative or just barely positive in that category. Now they've finally been, blowing some teams out, getting some better wins. So they're finally looking like they kind of at least belong where they are in the standings. But anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back to recap that game against the New York Knicks. So I will see you guys then. Peace.